Ronald Reagan walked onto the political stage as a candidate for governor in 1966. During his campaign, he found that attacking what he called the mess at Berkeley pleased the crowds.
It began a year ago when the so-called free speech advocates, who in truth have no appreciation for freedom, were allowed to assault and humiliate the symbol of law and order, a policeman on the campus, and that was the moment when the ringleaders should have been taken by the scruff of the neck and thrown out of the university once and for all.
He won by pandering to a citizenry that was outraged by what these terrible, insolent, ungrateful children were doing on the campuses.
As a matter of fact, I have here a copy of a report of the district attorney of Alameda County. It concerns a dance that was sponsored by the Vietnam Day Committee, sanctioned by the university as a student activity, and that was held in the men's gymnasium at the University of California. The incidents are so bad, so contrary to our standards of human behavior, that I couldn't possibly recite them to you here from this platform in detail. But there is clear evidence that there were things that shouldn't be permitted on a university campus. Let me just read a few excerpts. The total crowd at the dance was in excess of 3,000, including a number of less than college-age juveniles. 3 rock and roll bands were in the center of the gymnasium, playing simultaneously all during the dance. And all during the dance, movies were shown on 2 screens at the opposite ends of the gymnasium. These movies were the only lights in the gym proper. They consisted of color sequences that gave the appearance of different colored liquids spreading across the screen, followed by shots of men and women on occasion. Shots where the men and women's nude torsos on occasion, and persons twisted and gyrated in provocative and sensual fashion.
This portion of the Gray Line in the city is the first and only foreign tour within the continental limits and fountainhead of the hippie subculture. The hippies is often a strange world in which they live in. They take many trips, and the trip of the hippies is generally an unusual one.
Across the bay from Berkeley, a counterculture emerged on the streets of San Francisco. Descended from the hipsters of the beatnik era, hippies further exposed the chasm between our parents' generation and our own. By 1966, more and more of us were turning on, tuning in, and dropping out. Our alienation ran much deeper than political protest.
We were all beginning to see that it was much, much bigger than the war. It was much, much bigger than the civil rights movement. There were major things wrong. And I think the people who got involved in the counterculture on some level perceived that they did not want to be a part of what was wrong with a culture that was destroying the world. Now I can see that much better in retrospect than I could right then, but the point is that it was the culture that was sick. It was the whole American way of looking at things that was sick. And so I think we came to a realization that one way to change that is to just live it differently. Instead of trying to change the structure in a direct confrontational way, you just drop out and live it the way you think it ought to be.
You play anything besides the sweet potato?
Yes, the drums, conga drums, and trumpet. Yeah, and I go up in the mountains and yell now and then.
You do what?
Go up in the mountains and yell. Way up in the high in the mountains and yell as hard as I can.
What's the purpose of that?
Well, to greet the dawn, and to greet the noonday sun, and to greet the sunset.
You mean you stay up there all day, yelling at morning, noon, and night?
Right. And standing on my head and making gardens and painting pictures.
You mean you not only play the sweet potato, you also grow them?
Right.
Why do you indulge in smoking these narcotic cigarettes that
Why do people drink alcohol? It's the same reason.
It's a big ping pong table, you know? I mean, you say, why do we do this? And we say, why do you do this? You know, we don't agree.
Well,
you're the mass, you know, and we're trying to change it.
Why?
There's only
what
one.
are you trying to change it to, though? What are your principles, or do you have any?
We're not trying to change anything. We're just trying to be ourselves, man, to be what we want to be and do what we think is right.
Why don't you go out in the desert somewhere where it's clean and healthy instead of dirty up a community?
We're not dirtying up any community.
My parents sent away to the Bay Area a serious young folk singer. I came back with long hair down to there. I was wearing an enormous amount of beads around my neck. They figured I had abandoned everything I was taught. And I realized, you know, we had big arguments about this stuff, and I tried to convince them to sell all their furniture and go to India. And they weren't going for it. And I realized that no matter how far out their political views were, because they were mighty unpopular, my parents were pretty left-wing, that really they were materialists. They were concerned about how the wealth was divided up. And I was at that point in my consciousness where I didn't care about wealth. We were actually living communally rather than talking about communism.
Sell the radio, get rid of the subscription, tune in to those other bands that do not broadcast in words, that broadcast in joy. The form of God is the joy of his discovery.
Up, up, up. Everybody goes up, you see.
The counterculture burst onto the Berkeley campus during a strike in the fall of '66. At the close of a meeting, students started to sing Solidarity Forever, then suddenly switched to Yellow Submarine.
They're singing about we all live in the Yellow Submarine. What's this mean?
Again, it's difficult to explain, and I think we take this music seriously.